Dear participants, good morning to all of you. Greetings from St. Xavier's Catholic College of Engineering, Nagarkoil. In this pleasant morning, I am happy to welcome you all for the 5th day of the one-week hands-on workshop on data science using R. This program is jointly organized by the Department of Computer Science and Engineering and the Department of Information Technology. On day one, we discuss about the overview of R features, installation of the R Studio, R basics, variables, data types, and operators. On the second day, we discuss about the names, missing values, control structures, functions, and strings. On day 3, we discuss about subsetting our objects, file connection, R chart, and graphs. Yesterday, that is day 4, we discuss about the introduction to machine learning, supervised learning, implementation of classification and regression algorithms using R. Today, we are planning to discuss about unsupervised learning for data science, cluster analysis, association analysis, and dimension reduction. I'd like to remind two instructions to the participants. Please mute your mic to avoid the disturbances during the program. Also, I request you to switch off your camera to reduce the internet data usage. After the talk of the guest speaker, you can ask your queries by two ways. You can type your questions in the chat window and the speaker will address the queries, or you can make a hand raise and ask your queries. As usual, we have a simple assessment and feedback at the end of today's session. We already shared the recorded videos and the PPTs in the official webpage of this workshop. The link was already shared to you. Today also, we will be sharing the link. Now, I like to introduce today's speaker, Mrs. Suja A. Alex. Mrs. Suja A. Alex was graduated in Information Technology in 2006 from Anna University, Chennai. She obtained her ME degree in 2008, specialized in computer science and engineering, and currently doing PhD from Anna University, Chennai, under the specialization of information and communication engineering. She has been in teaching profession for the past 12 years. She conducted many workshops and seminars in various topics like data mining and Vega, knowledge discovery using Vega, machine learning using R, big data analytics, grid and cloud computing, data stream clustering with R, etc. Her areas of interest are big data analytics and data stream analytics. She is having more than 10 publications in reputed journals and conferences and chaired various key positions in many international conferences. Currently, she is working as Assistant Professor in Information Technology Department of St. Xavier's Catholic College of Engineering, Nagarkoil, Tamil Nadu, India. With this brief introduction, I invite Engineer Suja A. Alex to start today's session. Welcome, Madam.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to all. I am Suja Alex, working in St. Xavier's Catholic College of Engineering. Today, day 5 of 1 week workshop on data science using R. I would like to share my knowledge in unsupervised learning for data science. In this session, we are going to see introduction to unsupervised learning, cluster analysis, K-means clustering algorithm and its implementation in R, dimensionality reduction technique, PCA algorithm and its implementation in R, association analysis, a priori algorithm and its implementation in R. First, you will see what is unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning is important in the field of data science that explores the data for better understanding. For example, identifying similar data objects and generating different groups called clusters. reducing high dimensional data set, finding the association between variables or attributes or features. But the main challenge of unsupervised learning is it is difficult to evaluate the learning algorithm. Usually, unsupervised learning is applied to unlabeled data. So, no target variable in the data set. Hence, we may not know the correct output. That's why it's hard to decide the unsupervised model is right or wrong. So, it is sometimes called self-supervised learning. Some of the techniques are clustering, dimensionality reduction, and association analysis. Okay, now we'll look on into cluster analysis. Clustering is a descriptive and unsupervised learning algorithm. Clustering is defined as the task of dividing the given population into number of groups called clusters. The similarity between data points is determined using the distance function. One of the most commonly used distance measure is called Euclidean distance that computes the root of square difference between pair of objects. Next, we can see the types of clustering. First one is partitioning clustering. It divides the data objects into non-overlapping clusters, and each data object is assigned to exactly one cluster. So we get spherical shape type of clusters at the end. Some of the example techniques are k-means and k-midites. The second category is density-based clustering algorithms. It finds low-density cluster and high-density clusters. So finally, it discovers clusters of arbitrary shape that can be of any shape, not spherical shape. For example, DBSCAN and optics are some of the algorithms. Next, third one is hierarchical clustering algorithm. It finds a hierarchy of clusters. For example, Butch and Cure are some of the algorithms. Next, the fourth category is grid-based clustering algorithm. It defines a set of grid cells, and each grid cell is assigned with some data points, and it eliminates the data cell or the grid cell having the less density, that is below a particular threshold. Some of the example algorithms are Sting and Click. And finally, we have a model-based clustering algorithm. It optimizes the fit between the given data and the mathematical model. Example methods are expectation maximization and self-organizing map. Okay, now we can just look on the history of k-means algorithm. The clustering concept is first introduced by Lloyd in the year 1957. Then it is refined by Forgy and McQueen. The k-means clustering algorithm is derived by Hartigan and Wang in the year 1979. So our R uses this algorithm that partitions the observations into k groups such that the sum of squares of the observations to their assigned cluster center is minimum. Next, we can see about that core concept behind the k-means clustering. It divides the data into k clusters, and each cluster has a mean or centroid. K-means clustering can be applied over numeric continuous data only. For example, if I'm having iris dataset having 4 numeric attributes and 1 categorical attribute, we all know that. When we apply k-means clustering algorithm over iris data, we must choose all the numeric attributes only by excluding 5th column called species. So now it's time to look on the k-means algorithm. It is an iterative algorithm. First, we have to specify the desired number of clusters called k. Now we can choose k centroids randomly from the dataset. Next, to find the distance between, Euclidean distance between each data point and each cluster centroid. Based on minimum distance, the data points are assigned to the closest cluster centroid. So in the next iteration, recompute the cluster centroids. That is, we are going to update the cluster centroid with the new centroid values and do the same process. The algorithm stops when all the data objects are grouped and no change in cluster centroid. Okay, now we can see how to do k-means clustering algorithm in R. So we have to use the function k-means from the package stats to compute k-means clustering algorithm. The input parameters are x, must be a numeric matrix or numeric data frame or numeric vector. The second parameter is called centers. It denotes number of clusters we want at the end. Next parameter is iter.max. That indicates maximum iterations. Its default value is 10. That is, this k-means function, by default, it iterates 10 times to find the final clusters. Next parameter is nstart. It denotes number of random starting assignments. For example, that is, this value is always greater than 1. For example, if I'm giving the value is 20 means, nstart value is 20 means, then R will try 20 different random starting assignments and then select the one with the lowest within cluster variation. Okay, next we will see the implementation of k-means in R. Here, when we run this code, we will get a few outputs. That is, the algorithm we are going to implement it in the function called k-means. K-means function is going to do the k-means clustering algorithm. So in this code, I'm going to pass the data set iris numeric matrix. Iris data matrix I'm going to pass. So I already told that k-means clustering algorithm can be applied only over the numeric data set. So I'm going to choose the columns from 3 to 4. If you want, you can also do from 1 to 4. For this example, I'm going to use from 3 to 4. I'm not going to use the fifth column. Okay. And the first one is we are not giving any parameters, simply comma. It indicates that you all familiar with now R now. So it indicates that I am going to choose all the rows of a dataset iris along with the third and fourth columns. So now this is the numeric matrix where I'm going to apply k-means clustering algorithm. So next parameter is 10. So 10 indicates number of clusters I want at the output. So k value is 10. So if we have this type of simple code, we get few output parameters. After running this code, single line code, if you want to see the output, what happened behind this function, that can be explained with the help of few parameters called cluster, centers, TOSs, within SS, TOT dot within SS, between SS, size, iter, ifault. So these are the various output parameters, or these are the output attributes that explains how k-means algorithm done over this iris dataset on the third and fourth column of iris dataset. So here this cluster parameter indicates that is how all the values will be all the values will be clustered over a particular cluster. This center denotes average, or this average of each cluster, and TOS is nothing but total sum of squares. Within SS is vector of within cluster sum of squares. This will be calculated for each cluster. Next one is TOT dot within SS. It's simply a formula of sum of within SS, that is sum of all the clusters. Next one is between SS, that is between cluster sum of squares. Its formula is total sum of squares minus total within sum of squares. Next parameter is size. It indicates number of points in each cluster, number of points assigned to each cluster. Next one is iter. It denotes number of outer iterations done. By default, it performs 10 iterations. For optimization, if it performs outer operations, that indicated by this parameter iter. And finally, ifault. If any problem happened during this algorithm execution, it indicates. The algorithm shows if any error happened, it will be displayed in this ifault parameter. So these are the various output parameters that we can visualize the help of these parameters already built in this k-means function. So now we can have a small demo of k-means algorithm in R. First, I'm going to execute. So participants, if you have this code, you can also parallel run this code for better understanding. So now this clustering, k-means clustering is done. So next step is I'm going to visualize various output parameters. So it indicates that that is how all the values will be grouped into different clusters. So we are expecting 10 clusters here. I have given 10. So the meaning is first value is assigned to cluster number 4. Second value is assigned to cluster number 4. Third value is assigned to cluster number 4. So in that way, it assigns all the values of IRIS data set to different clusters. So we all know that number of rows in this IRIS data set. You know that 150 rows, that is 150 records will be stored in this already stored in this IRIS data set. So all these 150 data points will be splitted or divided into 10 different clusters. Now we look on the next parameter. Centers. So centers indicates that average value or the mean of all the 10 clusters. For example, the first cluster mean value is 4.066, 1.244. The second cluster mean is 1.448, 0.25. So in that way, it shows the mean or centroids of all the 10 clusters. The next parameter is total SS. So it shows the total sum of squares during the clustering process. Next one is within SS. So within SS denotes we are going to calculate this sum of square error for each cluster. For each 10 clusters, we are going to generate. This is sum square error for the first cluster 0.64. 1.1643 is the error, sum square error for second cluster. Similarly, for third cluster, up to 10 clusters, we can get it. This is for total within SS. Simply a sum of all the previous values. So 7.842189. Is between, that is between the clusters, that is inter-cluster, between clusters, how the error is varying. We can see the help of this parameter 543.05 is a sum squared error. And next one is size. So it indicates that number of data points are assigned to 10 clusters. So first one is 18, means 18 data points are assigned to cluster 1. 16 points are assigned to cluster 2, 5 points are assigned to cluster 3, then 21 points are assigned to cluster 4. In that way, There are 10 clusters. When we add these points, we get the answer 152. Sorry, 150. Next parameter is iter. Notes the number of outer iterations. There are 2 iterations were done. When the fault occurs, it displays, otherwise it shows 0. There is no error. So in this way, we can do k-means clustering in R. So I have given the output snapshots for your understanding. So this is the output, that is how this k-means clustering performs clustering over all the data points, all 150 data points. So before k-means clustering, when we plot the data, we get the first plot. After k-means clustering with the k value is 10, we get the second plot. That is, we get 10 different clusters. For execution also, you can try. Simply you can give plot of iris, all rows come out, third column to fourth column. This is the output, we can get it. There is 10 different clusters we can get. Okay, now we can move on to one more method called elbow method. That is, in the k-means algorithm, we know that k is very, very important. Choosing k value is very, very important. So elbow method is one of the approach to find optimal number of clusters needed for k-means clustering process. So in this small code, I am initializing the value 10 for k. That is, maximum value of k is 10. The meaning is, I am going to generate maximum of 10 clusters. Out of 10, I want to finalize the best value for k. That is, whether two clusters are enough or 3 clusters are enough. I don't know. By manual, we may not know. But we have a method called as elbow method. So when we implement this elbow method in this function, so I'm going to create one function of k, where I'm going to apply this k-means algorithm iteratively for 1 to 10 number of clusters. I'm going to check within SS with the maximum iteration of 20. And I'm going to starting with the random initial configurations of 20 different initial configurations for assigning random centroids. So in that way, when we try this function, finally, when we look on this WSS, that is within some square error, we can see that how elbow method is used to select the best value of k. So for that, we are going to use this elbow curve. So elbow curve is easily understood with the help of a line chart. Okay, so here I'm giving this plot function. I'm going to use type equal to b. So this b indicates that there is all the points were joined by lines. So now we will run this code. So this is the elbow curve. So this curve is drawn between number of clusters and within clusters sum of square error. So we have given k value is 10, maximum value of k is 10. So this elbow curve always shares looks like our elbow. So from this curve we can choose the most variance. That is, this is 0. This is this one. The first cluster is having highest value. The second cluster is also having some medium value. The elbow curve starts from this third point. From this third point, so we can stop up to this 3. So we can finally k value is 3. So after that points, we can just remove it. So this is one of the way to choose number of clusters. So now we get that k is equal to 3. So based on 3, again we have to do the same clustering process. So So this is the snapshot of that output. Okay, next we can see some of the limitations of k-means clustering algorithm. The first limitation is k-means works only on numeric dataset because it fully based on Euclidean distance measure. If the dataset has only categorical attributes, then k-mode algorithm can be used for clustering. Suppose if the dataset has both numeric and categorical attributes, in this situation, k-prototype algorithm can be used for clustering. The second limitation is k-means is suitable for small dimensional dataset only. But suppose if we have a high dimensional dataset, first we have to apply dimensionality reduction approach to reduce high dimensional dataset into low dimensional components. Then we can do clustering process. Okay, now we are going to look on a very interesting topic, dimensionality reduction. It is a process of reducing number of variables or features or dimensions or attributes. It also ensures that the transformed data maintains the similar information as in the original dataset. Now I have one question. How does dimensionality reduction improve the performance of predictive model? Just consider number of training samples is fixed and I am going to increasing the number of features in my data set. So what will be the classifier performance? The classifier performance gradually decreased when I am increasing the number of variables. We can see in this graph, when I am having less number of variables, I get a good number of classification performance in the y-axis. When I am starting increasing the number of variables in the x-axis, automatically this curve is exponentially decreased. So this phenomena is called curse of dimensionality. This is a very big issue in any predictive model. Is applied over a huge or high dimensional problem. So now we can see an interesting concept called feature selection and feature extraction. So normally dimensionality reduction is done in two ways, feature selection and feature extraction. If I am finding out the most relevant features from the data set is called feature selection. Finding new features after transforming the data from high dimensional space into low dimensional data set is called feature extraction. Okay, next we can see about principal component analysis. PCA is most widely used feature extraction method. It transforms the variables into a new set of variables called principal components. These principal components are orthogonal to each other. Orthogonal means all the principal components are perpendicular to each other. The first principal component expresses the most variation of the original data. The second component shows the next variation. Similarly of that, there is all the principal components must be arranged in a decreasing or descending order. So we may have some doubt on how many principal components we are going to generate or the algorithm generates. So always number of principal components depends on number of features of your data set. If I am having a data set with 4 dimensions or 4 attributes, then I can generate 4 principal components. If I am having 10 attributes in my data set, I am going to generate 10 principal components. Now everybody may have a doubt on over 10 attributes, they are going to generate 10 principal components. So we may guess that where the dimensional reduction is done. I will tell you later. Actually, dimensional reduction is done by selecting the best principal components. Okay, now we can look on to this PCA algorithm. So in the PCA algorithm, first step, we have to get the input data set. The second step, we have to compute the mean vector. The third step, we have to subtract the mean from the given data. Next step, we have to calculate the covariance matrix. And the fifth step, we have to calculate the eigenvectors and eigenvalues of the covariance matrix. Next, we have to choose the components and forming a feature vector. Finally, we can derive the new data set. So now we will solve one example using PCA algorithm. Then we can easily understand the concept behind what is eigenvector, what is eigenvalue, what is covariance matrix, everything. So consider the two-dimensional pattern 2, 1, 3, 5, 4, 3, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8. I have this type of two-dimensional data set I'm having. I want to compute the principal components using PCA algorithm. So first step, I told you that we have to get the input data. So here the input data is called as the feature vectors. So I have a 6 set of feature vectors. So x1 is 2, 1 in this. From this I have up to x6. There are 6 number of feature vectors are there. So I'm going to represent everything in the terms of this yellow color matrix denotes that feature vectors. There are 6 feature vectors. The step 2, I'm going to calculate the mean vector for all these feature vectors. So mean vector is represented by this mu. So we have to first add all the first values. That is 2 plus 3 plus all the initial values. That is 2 plus 3 plus 4, 5, 6, 7. We have to add everything and divide by 6. We get one mu value. That is called as mu1. Then by adding the second value is 1 plus 5 plus 3 up to 8. Divided by 6 number or total number of feature vectors are 6. We get another mu called mu2. So finally I have 4.5 comma 5 is the vector called mean vector. Step 3, I'm going to subtract the mean vector mu from each feature vectors. So initially we have the x1 value is 2 minus our feature vector is 4.5. Similarly for second one 3 minus 4.5. The next part, there is second column, we have the values 1, 5, 3, 6, all the values also subtracted from the second mu value is 5. So finally, we get a new set of feature vectors, we can get it. The step 4, we have to calculate the covariance matrix. So the covariance matrix formula is given by sum of xi, that is each feature vector value minus the mean vector mu into its transpose matrix divided by n. We do this process. For example, the first one is I will explain. Remaining you can easily understand. So for 6 feature vectors, I am going to find this 6 values, and each value is going to become a part of this covariance matrix. So for the first one, M1 is the first value of the covariance matrix. So M1 is determined with the help of the formula x1 minus mu into its transpose. So when you multiply this, we get that matrix is 6 point vector. We get the vector 6.25, 10, 10, 16. So similarly, we have to move on up to M6. So now how we can find this covariance matrix? We have to sum all the values M1 to M6 divided by 6. So by adding away all these matrices and by dividing by 6, we can get the covariance matrix. So this covariance matrix is the main turning point for finding out the principal components. Actually, there are 2 ways to find, not 2 ways, there are many ways are there. So one of the most popular 2 ways are covariance matrix based PCA component finding, and second one is correlation matrix based PCA component finding also there. So this problem is based on covariance matrix based eigenvector finding. There is PCA component finding method. So next, step 5, we can calculate the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of the covariance matrix. So here this lambda indicates the eigenvalue and this M indicates our covariance matrix. Just we determine the covariance matrix. It is represented by in this formula capital M, and this I denotes the identity matrix. There is 1, 0, 0, 1. There is this identity matrix its size depends on the size of our covariance matrix. Here our covariance matrix is 2 cross 2 matrix. If our matrix is 3 cross 3 means we have to go for using 3 cross 3 identity matrix. So when you have this characteristic equation, substitute all the values and equate to 0, and we can solve this equation with the help of the quadratic equation, that is in the format ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 format. We have to make this equation, and we have to find this value. So after solving this value of this lambda, we have to use this equation, another equation called mx equal to lambda x, for finding out the eigenvectors. So here M is the covariance matrix, X is the eigenvector, and lambda is the eigenvalue. So by substituting all the above values over this equation, we can get like this format. So while solving these two equations, finally we get the value of x1, x2. So we can get this eigenvector is 2.5 by 3.67. So from this, we can conclude that our principal values, our principal components are x1, x2. It's a vector. Its magnitude is 2.5 by 3.67. So this just how the algorithm is done over a covariance matrix we have seen. So now we look on this its implementation in R language. So here one important function called primcomp. There are so many ways to do PCA in R language. I'm going to use the function primcomp function. So this primcomp function takes some of the input arguments d. D denotes data set we want to reduce. Next parameter is COR, that is correlation. Whether we are going to apply this PCA algorithm based on correlation matrix, or we are going to apply based on covariance matrix. If I am giving true means I am going to apply correlation matrix. Next, score equal to true is also a logical value, true or false. So score denotes how all the attributes, that is how all the coordinates or all the dimensions, how it gives the contribution to each principal component. If you want to see that result, then you have to give true. If you don't want to see the score value, then you can simply give the false. So this program I am going to apply principal component analysis algorithm based on correlation matrix. So I am giving correlation is equal to true. Now we'll run this algorithm, and in R, then we can see in depth. First we can see asset, where I'm going to choose all the attributes, all the rows and columns. I'm going to choose only 1 to 4. So here also one challenge is there. There is this PCA algorithm works only on the numeric columns or the numeric attributes. So because fifth column we have species, it's a categorical attribute. So we have to exclude that. So I'm going to use from 1 to 4. I'm going to choose only the numeric columns and make it a new data matrix called D. Now we can view what is D. Then we can see the dimension of D. So this dimension of D shows that number of rows and number of columns. 150 rows are there, and number of columns are 4. Because the head command, with the help of this head command, we can visualize only top 6 rows of a data matrix. Now we are going to see the results with the help of plot and biplot function. So I am going to use the library graphics. Then we can apply principal component analysis. So now the PCA algorithm is done over our numeric data set D. If you want to see the results, you have to use the command summary command. Summary we get results, that is component 1, component 2, 3, 4. So now you understood that how that is why these 4 components were generated. Actually in the input data set we have 4 attributes. So 4 components, 4 principal components also generated. Okay. So in this summary, we can get this value standard deviation. We can look on the standard deviation. That is the standard deviation is greater than 1. Then we can choose that component is the best component and that shows the most variation in the data set. That is high variance component. So here value is first component 1.70. So it's greater than 1. Similarly, the second component is nearest to 1, that is 0.95. So most probably we can choose component 1 and 2 as a final principal components. Out of 4, we can choose these two as final principal components. How much variation occurs in each principal component is explained by this parameter proportion of variance. That is, the component 1 has a 73% of variation. Then component 2 shows the less variation, just a 22% of variation is there. Then when you look on this component 3, it has just that is, it's not going to explain anything about our data set. So by seeing this variation also, we can conclude that first two are somewhat okay. Okay, we can choose the first two principal components. So this is one way to analyze and we can fix the number of final principal components out of 4. Another one is there, plot of PC. This is just for plotting all the principal components. By seeing this diagram also, we understood that this component 1 has the highest variance. Next we have component 2, and finally we have the 3, 4 are very less values. So by seeing this also, we will choose component 1 is the best principal component that can cover all the data points because it has highest variance. If possible, we can also use component 2. If we want, we can also use component 2. This is a one way, another way. The plot of PC is another way to finalize the number of principal components they are going to select at the end. Next, we can see one more option. Plot of PC, type equal to L. This is the like elbow curve. So this L denotes the line chart. So this line chart is similar to the K-means algorithm. We have seen how elbow curve helps to find the value of K. So similarly here, this principal component analysis also, we can have this same elbow curve. So we can have this highest value for this component 1. We have here one dot is there, and for component 2 here we have some kind of less variation over this component, and this component 3 we have very less. There is this component 3 only, the turning, the elbow starts from this component 3. So the meaning is we can select only the component 1 and 2, we can choose as the final principal components. This is one way for choosing the number of principal components. Next, we will see one interesting parameter called loadings. So this loadings parameter indicates that it helps to view how individual dimension has contributed to each principal components. That is, for example, we have the 4 dimensions: sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. So it indicates that how this each dimension is contributed to each principal component. For example, the sepal length contributed 52% over this component 1, 37% for component 2, 72% for component 3, and 26% for component 4. So similarly for the sepal width, see one difference is there. The petal length and petal width does not give any contribution for component 2. Okay, so when we look on this type of contribution, we may conclude that component 1 is enough. When compared to component 2, we can finalize that component 1 shows the maximum variation, and all the that is all the dimensions contributed its value to component 1 generation. So we can conclude that component 1 is enough. So it depends upon the programmer, or it depends upon the researcher to choose number of principal components we want at the end. The next one parameter is scores. Score is very interesting one. That is because we have given the code score equal to true, we have given. So we can see this score value for each value. That is for each attribute. That is, it calculates the coordinates on each PC. That is, it actually the meaning is here also we have 150 values are there. Similar to our in the original data set, we have 150 rows. Here also we have 150 rows are there. So each values are now transformed values. Initially, just we can have this. Initially, we have our data set. We have this head of D. We have this type of values, initial values for all the four attributes. We have this type of initial values. But after applying this PCA algorithm, it changed to all these values. That is 5.1. For example, this 5.1 is transformed into minus 2.264 like that. So each of the value is transformed into new component. We cannot say not exactly how it is changed, but is actually these parameters are, when we reduce into this format only, we can going for achieving a good feature extraction. So all these values are very, very important. So these values, it really comprises the original data information. So as there may be value maybe 2.5 or 3.5, but this value also gives the same variation over this principal components. Now the sample outputs. Elbow curve, loadings parameter, parameter. Oh, I forgot to that. Okay, one more thing is there. That is a biplot function. There is biplot of PC. So this biplot function is there. This is a final way of visualizing and or we can analyze the principal components with the help of this biplot function. So this diagram shows that the sepal bit only focusing on a different direction. So its meaning is it has highest variation when compared to all the other dimensions. All the remaining dimensions, there is sepal length, sepal width, petal width, all these things, petal length, all pointing out the same direction. But this sepal width only pointing out the different direction. It shows that it gives, this sepal width gives the highest variation over generation of these principal components. Now we can see the benefits of dimensionality reduction approach. It compresses the data, our data set, and this reduces the storage space requirements. It reduces the time required for the computation since less dimensions are needed for the computation. So it eliminates the redundant features. So finally, our model performance will be increased. So the main use is it reduces the curse of dimensionality occurs. This problem normally occurs in classification, regression, and even clustering. So those we will apply those models over the huge or large dimensional data. So there we may face performance degradation because of this curse of dimensionality. So at that time, this dimensional reduction will be very helpful one. We can either go for feature selection or feature extraction approach. So similar to this PCA algorithm, ICA, LDA, all the variations are also there. Okay, now we can move on to the third concept, association analysis. Association rule mining involves two steps. The first step is finding all frequent item sets with minimum support. The second step is generating association rules by satisfying a particular confidence value. Next, we can look on the a priori algorithm. A priori is one of the frequent item set mining method. It's one of the classical frequent item set mining algorithm. It is based on the property called downward closure property, or we can call this as a priori property. So the definition of this downward closure property is any subset of your frequent item set must also be frequent. I repeat, that is any subsequent or subset of your frequent item set must be frequent. So before starting this a priori algorithm, we must set our mind that it is full and full works based on downward closure property. For example, if I'm having an item set bread, or if I'm going to purchase bread, butter, jam, then I will also buy bread and butter in the future. That is the meaning of this downward closure property. Okay, next we can see about what is association rule. The association rule shows which of the products are purchased together frequently. So it helps to analyze retail basket or any transaction database. The association rule format is A implies B. Its meaning is, if a person buy a particular product A, he will also buy the product B. That is the meaning of this format. And the rule A implies B. And this A is called left hand side or antecedent part, and this B is called the consequent part. Some of the example association rules are bread implies butter. So whenever we buy bread also we buy butter. Okay, it's a better combination. So we also buy butter, buy these both products at the same time. The second example is when we buy computer, we also buy software. So next we can see about association rules, mining process, how we can evaluate a best association rule. So association rules represent the associations or correlations between item sets. Some of the metrics used to measure the interestingness of a rule are support, confidence, lift, and apart from this also additional parameters also there is cosine, then this coverage, all the additional properties are also there. So here I am going to explain the three properties: the support, confidence, and lift. The support of a particular rule A implies B means it indicates how frequent the item set appears in the data set. So it achieves a downward, the support parameter is going to achieve the downward closure property. So support of A comma B divided by n. So in this way we will find the value for the support parameter. The second one is confidence value. Confidence of the particular rule A implies B. It indicates how often the rule has been found to be true. So it's support of A and B divided by support of the left hand side called A. Next one is, the next parameter is lift. So the lift of the rule A implies B, it indicates strong association between the products A and B, and they depend on each other. So its value is support of A and B divided by support of A into support of B. If the lift value is greater than 1, then it indicates that strong association, there is strong correlation is present between the products A and B. So based on these output parameters or the interesting measures, we will conclude which of the association rules are best rules out of the all mined rules. Okay, now we can see with an example. Assume there are 100 students, 10 out of them know data mining techniques, 8 know R language, and 6 know both of them. Now I have the rule R implies data mining. So how we can find the support and how to find confidence and how to find lift. So the value for support is, that is the support of the person, that is the student knows both R and data mining is 6 divided by 100 students. So we get 6. There is 6% students only. There is 6% of support is there for the rule R implies data mining. The second one is finding confidence. So confidence equal to support divided by probability of that R knowing. So where we know that support is, there is both, there is 6 students knows both R and data mining divided by only the probability of R. Whereas 8 only knows only R language. So we got 75% for confidence. Then for lift, there is confidence divided by probability of data mining only knows. So the confidence value is 0.75 this data mining knows, that is how many of them knows is only one student knows data mining alone. So we get 7.5. So now we can look on to a priori algorithm. So first we have to find all the frequent items, one item sets called L1. L1 denotes all the frequent one item sets. Next is the join step. Actually, there are two steps, two major steps in the APR algorithm, join step and the prone step. So a join step, it generates k item sets by joining Lk minus 1 with itself. That is Lk minus 1 joined with Lk minus 1. The next step is prune step. The prune step, it prunes the candidate k item sets using downward closure property. So now we have to scan the data set to count the frequency of candidate k item sets and selecting the frequent k item sets called Lk. So repeat this process until no more frequent item sets can be found. So this is the APR algorithm steps. So now we can see with an example. If I'm having a data set with 4 transactions with support value is 2, how to find the frequent item sets using a priori algorithm. So in this initial data set, transaction data set T has 4 transactions C1, C2, C3, C4. Each transaction having a less set of, that is the first transaction I bought the items G1, G3 and G4. Second transaction I bought G2, G3, G5. Similarly, third and fourth. Similarly, third and fourth transactions. So
இத ஆழமா புதைச்சிருங்க. இவன் யார் கைக்கும் கிடைக்காத மாதிரி.
So this initial transaction is going to be iterated with the help of this APR algorithm. So the first step we have to find a single frequent item set, that is L1 first we have to find. So all the items are, that is within the curly bracket I have this item, single item G1 I am having, its support is 0.5. The meaning is number of transactions having G1. That is the first one is first transaction is having G1, then third one is having G1. So there are G1 present in 2 transactions. So its support value is 2 divided by total number of transactions 4. So 2 divided by 4 is 0.5. So similarly, we have to find for the item set G2, G3, G4 up to G5. All single item set, single or one item set we have to find. Then we have to eliminate. We have to apply the prone step. The prone step is, that is, we have to eliminate the one item set that does not satisfy the minimum support 2. Minimum support 2 means 0.5. So this 0.25, that is G4, remaining is G4 occurs in this transaction only one time. So it is not eligible one. So we can prone to this, and finally we can get this frequent one item set. This is called L1, that is G1, next one is G2, next G3, next G5. So this is first iteration. Similarly, we have to go for finding next candidate 2 item set by joining L1 and L1. We get 2 item set. Again, we have to find how many times G1, G2 by combinedly occurs in this given transaction. We have to find the support value. Again, apply the prone step. So in that way, repeatedly have to apply this join and prone step. Finally, we can get a frequent item set. So in this case, our frequent item set is a combination. So 3 item set, frequent 3 item set. A combination is G2, G3, G5. The meaning is most of the transactions we are having this combination G2, G3, G5 is present. Okay, now we can look on the implementation of APR algorithm in R. We are doing first time how to install this package A rules. So this A rules package supports APR algorithm using the function a priori function. So after installing, you have to use the command library command. Next, we have to use the data set data of adult. I'm going to use the data set called adult. Next, we can apply a priori function. So just look on these outputs. That is, this a priori function is applied over, our algorithm is applied over the adult data set with the parameters. Support value is 0.5, confidence value is 0.9. That is 90% is the confidence value. And I'm going to set the target is rules. If you want to view all the frequent item sets, then you can use the value target equal to, within double quotes you have to give frequent space item sets. Here I'm going to find all the rules. I'm going to filter all the best rules that satisfy the metrics support and confidence. So its minimum support is given as here. Minimum support is 0.5. So it's been totally this adult data set has adult data set has 48,842 rows and 115 columns. So this rows will be reduced to half. So 24,421 is the minimum support. Then only we will consider that particular data item set is a frequent item set. So in that way we perform. If you want to find all the or visualize all the discovered rules based on the lift parameter, I told you that if the lift is greater than 1, then it shows the strong relationship between the data items. And this inspect command is used to visualize all the discovered best association rules. So the each rule, we are going to visualize only the few rules. That is, head of command is used to visualize only the few rules. So it indicates that all the left hand side we have set of attributes, and right hand side we have set of attributes, and it's each rule its support is given. Each rule it is support is given 0.5, confidence is given, coverage is one of the another one parameter, another one interestingness measure parameter similar to lift. Next one is lift. Similarly, count, that is number of transactions supports this type of rule. So in that way we can discover or we can visualize all the discovered association rules. So these are the snapshots I have taken. So when you try this code, first you have to install the command install.packages of A rules, then you can do the same process. Okay, now we can move on to the applications of association analysis. First one is market basket analysis. So we can identify the associations between the items in the shopping basket. That is, which are the items are frequently purchased together that we can find. So it helps the retailers to understand customer shopping habits or the customer buying behavior. And based on this, they will going for select the best marketing strategy. The second one is churn analysis and the selective marketing. That is, it helps to identify the customer groups who likely to purchase the new product or new service. Next one is a credit card risk analysis. It is used by the banks normally. So it helps to reduce the risk when assessing a new credit card of a particular customer. Next one is stock market analysis. It helps to find the relationship between individual stocks or between the stocks and economic factors. So the stock traders can select the best or the interesting stocks for their customers. Next, last one is medical diagnosis. So it helps the doctors to identify the relationship between symptoms, test results, and illness of a particular problem or particular disease. So these are the references I have prepared for this session. Any questions? So participants, if you got the program, you can try now. So unsupervised learning is very interesting one. So just I have explained only the 3 algorithms. So when you going for internet, you can have a lot of algorithms and R supports so many features for doing clustering process. Then dimensionality reduction similar to PCA, we have LDA, then ICA. There are so many algorithms and its equivalent package is also available. So one thing is first you have to learn the algorithm how it works. Then you can download the relevant package, then you can easily execute the code. The code is very simple. So when you got the past 3 days, you got the idea about R language. So now you can easily get this few idea about the unsupervised clustering techniques. Then you can easily do your findings in the R language. Any queries you can ask participants.
And dear participants, if you have any queries, please ask and get clarified from madam. You can type your queries in the chat window, or you can directly ask the questions to the madam also. We have already shared all the programs, so you can try executing that. Suja madam, there are few queries, questions in the chat window, so you can address that, madam.
Okay, sir. One question is there. What are the other clustering methods we can use for higher dimensional data sets? So actually for higher dimensional data set, it's very hard to apply the clustering algorithm directly over that because I told you that when we have more number of attributes, there is more number of dimensions, then definitely the prediction performance, either classification performance, regression performance, or clustering performance will be definitely will be degraded. So only one option is we have to go for dimensionality reduction approach. You have to identify the best approach, either PCA or LCA. You have to go for the best dimensionality reduction approach. That is the feature extraction approach. So similarly, you can also choose feature selection also you can go. Feature selection or feature extraction approach. First apply over the high dimensional data set. Then we can going for clustering approach. Ordinary k-means or any clustering approach. That is my opinion.
Suja madam, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Today's session went on well. There is no technical issues. The bandwidth was good from your side. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Participants, I have shared the feedback link in the chat window. I request all of you enter the feedback. If you have any other queries, please ask.